Hey everybody, how's it going? At the time of recording, it has been 76 days since the last time I uploaded a video to YouTube. There have been some really good reasons for that though. It has been such a challenging year, at the same time as it being one of the best years ever, the bizarrest contrast to have. But as ever, when things are a little bit tricky, there's plenty to learn. Over the last few weeks and months, I think I've learned more about my body and how to get the best out of it than I probably ever have done. So I'm going to share some of those tips with you now. Number one, if things aren't quite right, you just need to address it straight away. And I think this was a big issue of mine. I was at the start of the year trying to pursue road racing fitness, which is so time consuming. Whilst I absolutely love training to be as fit as I can be to race on the road, it's exhausting. And that took quite a toll on my body, I think. And that's probably what caused me to have the suspected appendicitis at the start of the year. And then just this trend of low energy, poor recovery, low morale, not low morale, but just low motivation to really push myself like I've always had throughout my life. Because it took so long to address this, it meant it took longer to recover from, because I tried to bury my head in the sand and just keep going. Obviously doing the Trans-Pyrenees in the summer was a massive highlight of the year, but the energy required to train for that then set me back further. What I should have done when I came back from there is just had a real rest for a good 4 to 6 weeks, and then slowly started riding again. So the learnings from this is, if you have something that's not quite right, the sooner you address it, the sooner you're going to recover from it. It's really simple information, but it's something that is so easy to neglect because we're kind of programmed just to keep going. Like, ultimately, that's how we've all survived for this long, I'm sure, as human species, just keep going. But if you want to perform well and you want to get the most out of your body, you just need to go, hang on, something's not right, let's stop what we're doing and address it first. And the best way to address that normally is by having a period of rest, recovery, or reduced activity. So you've now addressed that there's something not quite right. The second thing you need to do is you need to give yourself all the time that it's going to take to recover. And this requires having a lot of patience, but also creating a bit of a plan. When we got to the Gravel Champs in September, I knew that I wasn't going to be competitive. On the day, I didn't actually feel that bad. And this is partly why I've not made a video since. My whole life has been about how my body performs. And whilst I understand I'm not the world's best athlete, I've always performed relative to myself and always judged my personal performance relative to what I believe I'm capable of. So when I have periods where I don't perform like I want to perform, it's really frustrating because I expect my body to deliver a certain level of performance. And if that doesn't happen, it's quite disappointing, to be really honest with you, especially when I spend so much time thinking about a performance, how to get the most out of myself, all the rest of it. After the Gravel Champs, I knew that if I wanted to recover and enjoy the winter and enjoy 2024, I knew that it was going to take a period of time to really dig into what it was that my body needed. So I started reducing the complete amount of activity that I was doing, and I started riding the e-mountain bike a lot more. I absolutely love the e-bike because it means you get out and you have the feeling of being out on your bike without stressing the body too much, and you can be really specific with the amount of intensity that you give yourself on an electric bike. I know that not everyone's a massive fan, but I really think they have a place for rehabilitation in sport, for people that perhaps otherwise wouldn't ride, or for transport. I think e-bikes are amazing. I derive a great deal of pleasure from riding mine. And in fact, up until September this year, I'd only ridden it a handful of times. And that was something that I was really missing. Over the last few years, I've actually ridden them quite a lot. They're just smile machines in my eyes. So having neglected riding that in the pursuit of fitness just created fatigue mentally and physically. So revisiting something that makes me truly happy, riding my e-mountain bike near the sea, just with people, by myself, for 35 minutes, for 3 hours and 35 minutes, just whatever's possible. Really taking it easy and just enjoying that low intensity training. I think a lot of the time it's really easy to push really, really hard, but if you never give yourself that low intensity training, the time and the chance for your body just to enjoy being out and moving, but without placing it under a great deal of stress and a great deal of training load, ultimately you will overload your system and under recover at some point, and you just can't continue to progress if you don't allow for recovery. So part of my recovery from whatever it was that I had going on in my body over the summer, probably just a little bit of overuse. Loads of low intensity exercise on the e-bike was fantastic for this. And when I say loads, I only mean like 1 to 2, maybe 3 hours a week in total on average. It was just loads more than I had been doing throughout the rest of the year. And that just replaced a road ride or a cross-country mountain bike ride or a gravel ride or something like that. It just gave me time to go out and go through the motions without going through the exertion. And I continued to ride that e-bike right up until very recently. It was only in the last few weeks where I've started to feel that there's something more in my body and maybe I can start pushing again. Part of that period of time of getting back to that stage was also doing some gym sessions. This is something which I've sporadically started to do over the last 3 years. And each time I've done it, I've noticed huge benefits straight away. I just feel better. Therefore, I think it's something that's really beneficial to include for me personally. Whilst not everyone will agree, scientific research does show that actually strength or resistance training is probably one of the most beneficial things for our human bodies, especially as we start to age. That's something I've done 2 to 3 times a week with Nick Joyce on a FaceTime call, video call, where he'll be in his garage at home and I'll be here doing the weights that are behind me. It's hard. It's hard if you don't have someone to be accountable to. And in fact, if either one of us has been away or been ill, the other one has then struggled to maintain it. But it's been so good. It's just a really nice way to spend an hour talking to a friend for a few times a week, but also to do something that's really beneficial for the body. And you get some really good aches and pains when you start doing it. And it feels really like a really healthy way to make progress physically, especially when you haven't done it for a long time. If you have never done any sort of weight training, I highly recommend giving it a go, but you need to allow a good long period of 6 to 12 weeks before you start to really notice the benefits. And the best way I can describe it is when you do lots of endurance training, you have this nice full feeling in your legs and you're able to exert yourself on the pedals really nicely. If you don't train, then to me at least, it feels like my muscles are empty or my legs are empty and I don't have as much to push with. If you don't train on the road a huge amount or on a bike a huge amount, but you do the weights instead, it kind of replicates that full feeling in the muscle that you've just got a lot there to push with. And I think it's really, really beneficial. So you've addressed what's wrong. You've taken the time now to understand what's going on and to allow some recovery. The next big thing, and I'm looking at my notes that I've made, the next big thing is the focus. So what is the next goal? Well, for me, the focus is enjoyment, actually. And I think I neglected that a little bit this year. I was trying to pursue a goal with the idea of making a video in April. Whilst I really wanted the goal as well, it wasn't just purely about the enjoyment of what I was trying to achieve. It was for a reason other than just pure enjoyment. And I think that added an element of stress. It was an amazing opportunity. I wanted to race the Rutland Cycle Classic at the start of the year in the end of April, I think it is. It's a race that I've never managed to win. I finished second in before. It's a really nice British race. It's a good level of racing. It attracts international competition and it would have been amazing to have gone back and raced it. But in order to do that, I knew that I needed to be at a good level of fitness. And it does carry an element of stress with it. Whilst 3 or 4 years ago, 100% I wanted to return to that level of competition. Life has changed a lot in the last 3 or 4 years. And I don't quite have the same physical capacity as I did back then. It's not necessarily aging, it's just the reality of life. You know, I have a full-time job, I have a family. Training isn't the first priority in my life anymore. Sometimes I wish it was, sometimes I definitely very glad that it's not. It's exhausting training full-time. But when you have a goal, that outweighs the exhaustion. So yeah, trying to pursue that, it didn't necessarily detract from the enjoyment. It just meant that I was sometimes riding a bike in a way that I didn't necessarily want to ride a bike that day. You know, you do have training fatigue when you've trained for years and years, or you have less scope for certain individuals then, have less scope for how strict they want to be with their training going forwards. I love training, I love being fit, but also I love just waking up one day and thinking, oh, I'm going to do this today. And that had definitely disappeared throughout the year. I mentioned earlier that I hadn't ridden the e-bike as much. I'm pointing to it, it's over there. Hadn't ridden the e-bike as much, and that was partly because of the pursuit of fitness. I was probably taking it too seriously. So focusing on what it is that you like about health and fitness is really important when you're trying to recover from something. Revisit the reason you were doing things in the first place. For me, absolutely, it has to be enjoyment now. Riding all different types of bike across all different types of terrain as often as possible. Ideally, my week would be with no 2 rides the same, never doing the same route, never riding the same bike. In reality, that's obviously tricky. The rebuild to fitness is absolutely my favorite thing because it always comes with refound motivation. So you've addressed the illness, you've taken the time, you've focused on what it is that you want to do and why you enjoy it and what it is you're aiming for, then it's time to start rebuilding back to fitness. And that is the best bit because it comes with this newfound motivation and all of this extra energy that you were perhaps lacking before. This is how I perceive it to be, at least. You want to ride your bike again because you've had that period of adjustment and time away from the structured training. As you start to rebuild your fitness, it comes with momentum as well. You feel one week that you're stronger than the week you were before, and that's a really positive feeling. But it requires you to be quite in tune with your body. So if you overload one week, then you need to take a week easy just to allow your body to absorb what you've given it that week before. If you don't take that time to absorb the training and to adapt to it, you're just going to slip backwards. So it's like baby steps in those first few weeks where you just introduce training, introduce a little bit of extra load, take an extra day off here or there, and adjust to it along the way. And by doing this, you will be surprised at how quickly your fitness returns to what it was. It doesn't take as long to regain fitness as you first fear. I think this is the beauty of having trained for years and years. Your body will respond well. So if you've taken the time and you truly recovered from whatever it was that you were experiencing, illness, injury, the return to full fitness is always faster than you expect, and that's the reward for all of the hard work that you put in. You know, sometimes when you think, oh, why do I focus on living healthily? Why do I focus on going to bed on the right time? Why do I focus on my fitness? Well, it's there to protect you when you're older, isn't it? As we all age, more and more things seem to come our way. Illnesses, injuries, all of these little things. Well, how much worse could they be if we hadn't paid all of that time and attention to our fitness throughout the years before? Of course, you'll never be able to make the direct comparison between, oh, this was the unhealthy version of me without illness versus the healthy me without illness. Let's just assume, had we not lived healthily and taken care of ourselves, things would have been much worse. And in my mind, that has to be the reward for taking care of our body. So what does all of this mean for the future? Well, it means not a lot's going to change. I have some really cool goals. I'm going to read through some of them. I'm still pursuing the 1000 watt 60-second effort. I've gotten close over recent years, 925 watts or 927 watts for 60 seconds. It's a massive goal ever since I stopped racing to try and achieve 1000 watts for 60 seconds. And I think by doing the weights, pointing to the squat rack that's behind me and using the row bike that's behind me, I think I can slowly return to pursuing that goal. It's something I completely neglected this year. In fact, I reckon I've done less than 20 sprints all year. And that's another thing. I love doing sprint training. It's something that I've always done. And that's something which, because of the goals I had this year, kind of took a sidestep from my program. So returning to that, I spend a lot of time at the moment riding this bike. In fact, I did my first ever downhill mountain bike race last weekend at Lanhydrock. It was absolutely brilliant. Whilst it's a proper grassroots level event and the track as well, it was a brilliant introduction to gravity focused downhill racing, and it's just such a friendly, welcoming scene, especially here in the southwest, which makes it really encouraging. My little boy raced as well and he absolutely loved it, so that's something which I really want to do a little bit more of. I did manage to crash in the practice laps, got a little bit carried away, so there's obviously work to be done there. But the nice thing with that is you have all the same fitness attributes that you need for riding on the road, plus the technical aspect of cycling, which I really, really enjoy. And because it's new, you can make lots of progress. And I really like that. It's just a new challenge, which has some of the same transitional fitness and things from road cycling. So it feels like a pursuit that's well worth my time. And then at the end of the year, it's 2 years without alcohol. So whilst I don't feel the need to make a video on every single anniversary, I feel I probably learned more about my relationship with alcohol in the second year. I feel like year one was a real adaptation phase. And the second year, it consolidates that and then some. So I'd like to share my thoughts on that with you when we get to New Year's Eve. And then as ever, I'd always love to hear your suggestions. I always really enjoy reading the comments. And whilst I can't respond to every single comment, I do absolutely try. And I do definitely read every single one as well. So thank you very much for watching. I look forward to seeing you again soon.